perspective is the most important. So I learn as I'm doing this too.
That's awesome.
So the text just went out. Let's give it a couple minutes and then we will get started. This is also going to be live streaming on YouTube. You might have that somewhere on your screen. That's where, if somebody's not able to join us on Zoom, they can join us there and it gets automatically recorded.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Live streaming on YouTube. You might, there we go. Thank you. I see that we have some of our families that are joining us. Thank you all for being here. We're going to take just about one more minute to allow other families to join us, and then we are going to begin. We have a fantastic presentation lined up for you, led by our Assistant Director of Student Services, Mr. Ian Fish, and our partner from School Status, Ms. Brenda Tapp. So if we give it just a couple more seconds, we will get started, giving other people just some time to join us. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Mr. Fish, would you mind moving on to the next slide?
Absolutely.
All right, so this is the presentation on why attendance matters. And as we mentioned, it's presented by Mr. Ian Fish. He is our Assistant Director of Student Services, and Ms. Brenda Tapp. She's a Customer Success Manager with School Status. And they're going to go into, who they are and what their roles are in just a bit. Next slide, Mr. Fish. Perfect. So I was going to welcome you on behalf of the board, but we actually have a very nice surprise. We have our trustee, Miss Julia Moreno, in the room with us. Miss Moreno, would you like to say a couple of words?
Thank you so much. I actually am really excited to hear tonight's presentation, and I look forward to learning something, as I always do when you present. And I welcome all of our families on behalf of the Board of Education.
Thank you, Miss Moreno.
All right, Dr. Cisneros, am I good to go?
I think one of the slides didn't come up, but let me just make a quick announcement. So for our families that are joining us, you do have a couple of ways that we'd like you to communicate with us. We don't want this to be a we talk at you sort of presentation for an hour. What you can do is anytime you have a question, you have the chat option at the bottom of your screen. You also have a Q&A option, and then you can raise your hand. And then that'll indicate to us that you would like to share something or maybe ask a question. We definitely want this to be interactive. Y si necesita esta información en español, en la parte inferior de su pantalla verá un globo que dice Interpretation. Si no ve el globo que dice Interpretation, tal vez tendrá 3 puntitos que dicen More o Más. Y ahí haga clic y va a haber una opción de interpretación y cambia el idioma de inglés a español. Si necesita esta información en español, tenemos a una campeona que está con nosotros, Ivonne Orozco, que siempre nos apoya, nos ayuda para asegurarnos que todas nuestras familias, sean habla hispanas o hablan inglés, puedan acceder a esta información. Mr. Fish, it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Cisneros. Before we get started, my name is Ian Fish. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Services here at Albert Unified School District. I'm in my 5th year in this position, my 20th year as a member of the AUSD family. So I really enjoy working for the district, really enjoy the families and the community we have here. It's my honor and privilege to have one of my close friends and colleagues with School Status here with me tonight. Her name is Miss Brenda Tapp. Brenda, I'll have you introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here to be a part of the conversation. I'm Brenda Tapp. And I have been with School Status now for about a dozen years, just a little bit over. And I've been in professional development consulting for over 25 years. So I'm super excited. I also work with school districts nationwide to help them improve their attendance. That's why we're here.
Thank you, Brenda. And part of the reason that I asked Brenda to be here is that last point that she said. She does not only support us as a school district, but she also supports schools throughout California, as well as across the entire United States. So a lot of the things that we're seeing and trying to address with our students and attendance are the same trends that we're seeing nationwide. So Brenda's going to talk about some stuff from that lens and that perspective. And I'm going to talk about options that we have as families, as students, when it comes to attendance, and kind of the reasoning behind why attendance is important and how we can be successful as partners, community partners, us as a school district, us working with you as families to make sure your kids are engaged and supported while they're at school. Another big reason why we're here tonight is September is what we call Attendance Awareness Month. It's Attendance Awareness Month across the entire United States, where school districts really place an emphasis on student attendance. And we'll share some data with you today about why attending school, especially the early months of school, are indicators for how a student could potentially either reach graduation status or dropout status. There's two things on this screen. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner, it says, "Be present, be powerful." We always collaborate and partner with our group at Attendance Works. So our slogan this year is kind of a combination of two topics or two slogans: be present, be powerful, and be better together. Our superintendent, Dr. Byrne, new superintendent, Dr. Byrne, has placed an emphasis on the theme and idea about being better together. It takes everyone on this Zoom call. It takes everyone in the school district, including our trustees on the school board, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers. We're all here because we have students and we want to see those students be successful. Dr. Cisneros, there's your slide. Sorry about that. It got put in a different spot, but there we go. So I'll just put that there. Different ways you guys can communicate, please. Dr. Cisneros will be kind of monitoring the chat. If there's a question, you know, Dr. Cisneros, if you could just let me know, I'd have no problem stopping to address any questions that the group might have.
Beautiful, thank you.
So California Education Code. California Education Code says that students between the ages of 6 and 18 must be enrolled and attend school. That's California Education Code 4820. That basically is the overall arching umbrella for why we have to have kids in school. It's a state requirement and it's an education code. Every parent or guardian between the ages of 6 and 18 is mandated to make sure that their school attends school, or I'm sorry, I apologize, mandated that their child attends school on a regular basis. If the student doesn't attend school on a regular basis, sometimes that is where we as a district have to come in, and we've moved in our approach from being punitive to being more restorative and supportive. We still have the option, should we have to go down that road, to be punitive, but we want to work and support our families to make sure that they're getting engaged and connected with our schools. So there is some legal reasons why we want kids there, because we know that kids need to learn. We need to know that kids need to be supported. Schools are a great place for kids to be fed, you know, counseled. All those things fall under kind of that legal requirement of Education Code 4820.
Awesome. I thought I would share some terms that you'll hear throughout today's presentation. Some of the terms sound a little scary sometimes, but really what we're going to talk about is two different types of absences or terms. The first one we're going to talk about is truancy. So truancy is defined in California as any student who has missed lost learning time on 3 individual days throughout the school year. So 3 unexcused absences, like full day absences, or even missing 30 minutes or more on 3 separate days of the school year, the district then would declare your student as truant. So that's the unexcused, unverified also counts towards truancy. Vacations also count towards truancy. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but really just at 3, and that's just more of an identifier that your school really wants to work with you and connect. Now, we're also going to talk about chronic absence. And I know you've been hearing about this in the news. Chronic absence is a huge factor in the student's success and is defined as any student that misses 10% or more of the school year. 10%, if your child is enrolled all school years, is just a couple days a month, 18 days that your student will be chronically absent if they're enrolled all year. So it adds up quickly, and we'll talk about some statistics of when your student does become chronically absent, the risk factors and what happens with your student in school, how they can fall behind, disconnection. So we'll talk about that. So truancy is strictly unexcused by state definition. And then the chronic absence includes all absences, excused, unexcused, and even suspension.
So just a little visual for that, because sometimes parents will call a school or call our office and say, well, my child was sick. Isn't that an excused absence? Yes, that's one of the qualifications for an excused absence, but we still report that absence to the state. We want to track how many days has a student been sick, how many days is a student missing, lost instruction. What it all boils down to is we want to make sure our students are accessing their education and instruction. So sometimes parents get kind of hung up on the word excuse, meaning, well, it's okay. Yes, we're accepting that reason for the kid being out of school. Another example we'll talk about in a minute might be like a funeral or family has court on a certain day. Those would all be examples of excused absences. Excused absences still count to your student's total absent count, or the chronic absenteeism that we have to report to the state in terms of how we're doing engaging students and engaging our children when they're coming to campus.
So, Mr. Fish, would I be able to ask, just to clarify for our parents, then what is the difference between an excused and an unexcused absence? Besides, we accept that they were absent for this verifiable reason, but what is the difference in, I guess, the impact on a child or impact on the SART or the SART process?
Yeah, impact on the child is the loss of the learning time. Unexcused absences, we're going to talk about and give some examples here in a minute. Unexcused absence would be like, I took my child to Disneyland. That's not an absence that we're okay like saying is an excuse, because it's not one of the 13 or 12 to 13 items outlined. They're always adding more outlined under California Education Code. California Education Code is very specific on what are allowable excused absences, and then anything that falls outside of that umbrella would be an unexcused absence. The impact on the student is still the same. The student's not in a seat learning, not gaining their education, not getting access to that curriculum, counseling, support, services, whatever that might be. So you can see here as well, suspensions also add to that kind of absenteeism. It's just a difference of how we look at it. We still, if a student has 35 unexcused absences and 10 excused absences, that's missing 45 days of instruction. That's where we're going to step in and say, how can we better support you? What can we do to make sure your child's at school every single day? Thanks for that question. That's a good question.
Yeah, and it's amazing how fast that time adds up. So when we look at the long-term impacts of missing school, sometimes in our minds as parents, it's just a day here, an extra Friday there. Oh, they're sick today, we gotta keep them home, and these days are adding up. Missing just 4 days per quarter equates to 16 days in one school year. What you think? Not a big deal, right? But over your child's whole educational experience or journey, that equates to over a year of lost learning. So it adds up quickly. I know I've seen your data, I've seen nationwide data, kids are missing way more than 16 days per year. Many have missed more than 40, and they're missing these days year over year, and these days are adding up because I think we have our best intentions. Our kids are going to show up, but we need to leave town early on Friday. Oh, then my child got sick. Oh no, now something happened. We have to take some time off for an emergency, and it adds up. And it not only does the student or child fall behind, It's also that disconnect from the classroom many times, right? And even being on time. Sometimes, we're running late and we think like being late to class isn't a big, huge deal, but that also adds up. Being just 20 minutes late per day, or I'll even say 10 minutes late per day, does equate to a lost learning of almost a third of a whole school year in that student's K through 12 education. So being on time, being present is critically important. And again, it's easy to underestimate how much time has been missed. But what we're seeing is nationwide, about 60% of the kids who were chronically absent, remember that 10% mark, have been chronically absent year over year. So it's repeatedly missing 20 days of school per year or 40 per year. And that's why we want to have the conversation today about how we can help support you and things to look out for if your student is missing school.
So just this little snapshot that Brenda shared, coming out of the pandemic, we know that it was tough for kids to access their education, gain learning, stuff like that. And we were trying the best country, like nationwide, California, statewide, to engage our kids virtually like this. It was hard. So those kids already fell behind. So imagine now that we're back in person, we're still trying to play catch up. So that's why it's more important that our students are in the classes, on the campuses, receiving those supports academically, social, emotionally, with counseling or other supports and services, and kind of getting back into that rhythm of getting up, going to school, getting up, going to school, getting up, going to school. Because ultimately, later down the line, the goal is for them to graduate and look at college and career pathways where they're going to have to get up and go to something, get up and go to college, get up and go to a job. So it's just kind of retraining our students as we kind of push out of COVID now, 3-4 years post-COVID, to get that engagement back up. So, Brenda, one more, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, that's you.
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted to steal my thunder here now. So what we did is we took a look actually at the data at Elverd USD across the district. And what we have here is by grade level along the bottom, the hours of learning or missed learning instruction time for our students that ended the year chronically absent versus those that did not. And there is a huge amount of learning loss difference between the two. And I'm going to just start with our kindergartners, which is the third column over, third bar. So on average in Elverd, our kindergartners missed about 49 hours of learning if they weren't chronically absent. They were below that 10%, below the 18-day mark, right? 49 hours of learning compared to their friends and colleagues and classmates, same classroom many times, that were chronically absent. Those kids missed out on an average of 155. So that's about 26 days of school if we look at that compared to those that had missed less than, 15 or so. So there is a huge gap between the two. If we draw our eyes over about fourth, fifth grade starts, you see the increase in the chronic lost learning time. Our freshmen on average, if they were chronically absent last year, they didn't just miss 18 days. On average, those kids missed over 37 days of school. So, and that's adding up year over year. And again, that can lead to frustration in the classroom, right? You have students who are showing up every day. Some miss a day here and there. Some are missing 60 or 70 days of school, but we're all trying to learn at the same pace. So that can cause frustration on our students, on the teachers, the staff, right? So our goal today is to help reduce the absences that happen, to get, like Ian was saying, to get our kids back on track, and showing up in the classroom is where we need them every day, Monday through Friday during the school year.
I think one of the things that as we continue our partnership with School Status and we continue to come out of post-pandemic, if we look at this data next year, what we really want to see is obviously our blue lines go higher and our orange lines get smaller. That just means that we have those students in seats. We have those students getting that structure, that education, that curriculum, and really it comes down to forming the relationships with their teachers and their staff members. So it's a big gap you can see right here where we're trying to really work every single day and throughout the year to close those gaps. So back to kind of the unexcused versus excused absences. Examples of the unexcused absences, we kind of covered this, but you can see on the right-hand side, there's 14 acceptable reasons under Education Code 48250. And that's kind of the umbrella that tells us these are the acceptable reasons that a school says we're accepting the reason for your absence. We're still tracking that absence because we want to make sure that your students not missing that 10% of the school year, but we understand. We understand life happens, right? We understand that people get sick. We understand that students get sick, especially at our younger elementary ages. Little kids walk around. They don't necessarily always abide by personal space. They sneeze a lot. They don't know how to cover. So we understand illness takes place. Some others, observance of a religious holiday, bereavement, family members unfortunately pass away. With our older kids that can serve on jury duty, that is an acceptable excused absence in the state of California. And then when you look on the other hand side, just other examples. Transportation. If transportation is a barrier, work with your school sites, work with your administration, work with your community coordinators that we have now in our district at 6 different sites. We'll try to address transportation needs if we can with supports. We can't provide transportation for everybody, but there's unique ways. The bus is a quarter. It doesn't cost any money to get on the city bus outside of a quarter. And in fact, sometimes RTA even does free transportation for students as long as they have an ID. Lack of childcare. We hear this a lot. My kid woke up late. I woke up late. You know, I always say showing up late is better than not at all. I'd rather the student come to school late and get some education versus not showing up at all. So if your child struggles to get up and you're always constantly fighting with them and you get there at 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock's better than not having the kid go to school. Okay. Now it has to be within reason. If your kid wakes up at 1 o'clock and school's done at 1:30, then we have other issues that we need to kind of address and take on. Absences have to be cleared within 3 days. Otherwise they become unexcused. So what do I mean by cleared? If you happen to miss school, I've done it, and I'm the guy that talks about attendance a lot with my own children. We've gone somewhere and it wasn't an excused absence. Still communicate to the school, let them know. Okay. If otherwise it's just going to be marked. If I have my son at the doctor's and I don't call the school, it's unexcused until I call and say, my son Everett was sick and now he is out for 3 days. Here's a medical note. Or we were at a funeral. Here's why. Or a court appearance, etc. So communicate with the school. We're going to talk towards the end a lot about communication. We can solve a lot of problems the more we communicate and kind of work with one another.
Ian, can I just add something in real quick on that last slide? One thing, I think even as a parent, and I see this nationwide, we have a lot of students that go to doctor's appointments. And by no means today am I going to say your kids should not go to the doctor when they need to go and for checkups and all of that. But whenever possible, keep in mind, we only have 180 days of school. There's 185 of not school days, and there's early dismissal days. I, as a parent, personally had to do this because, of course, I work in attendance. I don't want my kids missing school. If we are going for a checkup or dental cleaning, things like that, typically when you're at the office, they'll try to get you scheduled. Hey, how about Tuesday at 10 or Wednesday at 11? Sometimes as parents, we have to push back and say, hey, how about next week we have an early dismissal day, or hey, we have a break coming up. Whenever possible, really try to schedule those appointments outside of school time. So again, because it would be excused, but your student's missing out on an opportunity at school by missing out. So I'll say if they're sick, truly sick, go to the doctor, absolutely. But if it's more for a routine checkup, things that can wait for outside after school hours, weekends, during holiday breaks, things like that, that's what I would, and sometimes you have to do pushback with your medical provider, or dentist, eye doctors, things like that. But usually they'll have the ability to schedule it outside of school hours as needed. That makes up a large amount of chronic absenteeism. I just want to throw that in there.
No, and that's a very great point, Brenda, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So impact on academic success. There's some like statistics information out there about absences and how absences are indicators. And the indicators either tell us how on track or not on track a student might be. Not necessarily, but might be. Some of the indicators we look at in terms of attendance, if students who are missing a significant amount of school, are not engaging early on, they're going to struggle to read proficiency by third grade. If they struggle to read in the proficiency level by third grade, that's an indicator that might say they will struggle to graduate from high school on time. Okay. Now there's other interventions that might be able to be put in place and things to support that student. But again, an indicator. 10% of kindergartners and first graders who tend to miss school score below 60 points below on reading tests and nearly 100 points below on standardized math tests. Again, just an indicator that tells us, hey, kids are missing school. They're not being successful academically. Let's look at their attendance. They're not engaging. What other interventions and supports? I talked at the beginning that September is Attendance Awareness Month. And I found this very good kind of statistic here in terms of the importance of attendance early on in the school year. So a student who misses 2 to 4 days in September are 5 times more likely to be chronically absent than students who miss fewer than 2 days during the first month of school. Now understand, a lot of schools nationwide go back to school after Labor Day. We go back to school early in California. So really what we're looking at in California is that attendance in August, as well as that attendance in September. We're looking to have really good attendance and build those strong habits early on so that those students continue that momentum throughout the course of the school year. Another link between absenteeism and dropouts, we look at, and our attendance group looks at kind of chronic absenteeism as one of the strongest predictors of identifying dropouts. It's even more of a predictor than test scores and suspensions. But think, if a kid's getting suspended from school, they're missing school. If a kid is struggling academically, it's probably because they're missing the educational opportunities that they have or getting the supports that they need. Kids struggle, but how do we as a school district provide supports and build them up? In 21-22, 30% of students in California were chronically absent. Okay? Prior to the pandemic, and this is something that mirrors our district, prior to the pandemic, 10% of students in the state of California were chronically absent. So we as a district, historically pre-pandemic, had only about 12% chronic absenteeism as a district. Once the pandemic hit, we mirrored that stat for 21-22 like the rest of the nation. We were right around 30%. We're slowly on a decline, getting back towards that 10%, 12% absenteeism, because school sites are working really hard to make sure you guys are supported and engaged.
Well, let's talk about why students are missing school. So again, I work with districts nationwide. So your district is not alone. Your schools are not alone in this. There's many reasons why kids miss school. Some excused, some unexcused again, but every day adds up and counts towards chronic absenteeism and learning time. So sometimes it's that the student is bored. They just don't see the value of going to school and they'd rather stay home. Sometimes it's due to chronic illness. And in those situations, it's really important that your school is aware of that situation so they can help and be supportive to help you. Sometimes those students feel very far behind, kind of lost in the classroom. Remember when we talked about the gap between those that show up more often versus those that lose a lot of school. It's easy to feel lost in that when you've missed so much school. You feel like you can't catch up. Sometimes it's due to not having clean clothes, and that's embarrassing. The district can help and the school can help support that if that is a concern. I'll come back to you, Ian, in just a minute. Also, sometimes poor sleeping habits. The kid doesn't want to wake up, your student, doesn't want to wake up in the morning. They don't want to go to bed at night. Really setting routines is really critical and important with that. Also, Ian touched on babysitting younger siblings, keeping the older ones home to watch the little ones. Again, there are resources and support available to help with that situation. A big one, especially I will say since COVID, is extended weekends and holidays. It's tempting to take a Friday off or a Monday off, take a 3 or 4 day weekend. It's tempting to extend your 2-week winter break into 3, right? And we see at Alvord, some of the highest absence days are Mondays and Fridays and the days leading up to a holiday. Although it's tempting, it is so critical that your student does not miss school on those days because, again, they're adding up a day here, a day there is adding up. And it's important because we do have school Monday through Fridays. If your student feels like they're being picked on or being bullied, it's really important to report that to the school immediately and have those conversations of what you're seeing and what you're hearing. And anxiety, this has been huge. It's always been big, but brought more, I think, more in our view in the last several years. Anxiety is when your student may feel anxious about going to school. So this is also important to talk to your school about because there are resources, counseling, therapy. And I know sometimes as parents, our student feels anxious about going to school. So we decide to keep them home to avoid feeling that anxiety, right? And then let's try again, let's go to school. And it just gets worse and worse. So it's really critically important that you talk to your school about this so they can help support your student in feeling more comfortable in coming to school, building up the confidence back into your student and really helping them along the way. Because I think sometimes we keep our kids home so they don't have to feel that. And then it's even harder to go back in the long run. And Ian, I'd love for you to chime in too, but this is what we're seeing nationwide. Again, this isn't just your district or your community. This is what we've been seeing, especially over the rising over the last several years for sure.
Yeah, and I think two of the biggest things when a student's attendance becomes so severe that they have to come before what we call our school attendance review board at the district level, our secondary students, our middle to high school students, it's really that falling like far behind point. They get to a point where they've dug themselves in such a deep hole, they give up, they lose hope. They may have 6 Fs in classes. They don't know what to do. So they just say, well, it's easier for me to just ditch school or not come to school. Mom and dad go to work early in the morning. Mom and dad may not be aware that they're not going to school. And it's really with our secondary age kids, that feeling of hopelessness, that they can't be successful. So we're really trying to work with students and sites when they get to us of what are the 2 to 3 classes you can focus on to pass. Let's not try to pass all 6 classes right now. What's 2 to 3 classes? Who are you close to passing? Let's focus on that. And then establishing good habits of schoolwork and attendance. With our little kids, it's really the poor sleep habits. Some little kids, I've heard as little as kindergartners going to bed at like 10 o'clock at night. That's way too late for our little ones to go to bed. They need a lot of sleep because their brains are growing, their bodies are growing. So just establishing as parents those good nighttime and morning routines where we go to bed at a certain time. When we get up, this is what we do. And the establishment of those routines seems to help our younger generation or I shouldn't say younger generation, our younger students when it comes to engaging in school on a consistent basis.
Ian, would you be able to speak on the last slide, the very last point that Ms. Tapp kind of highlighted, so that we've been seeing that nationwide, and I know we've seen it in Alvord, the anxiety. So when a student does report to parents that they have anxiety, or maybe the parents have anxiety about school, whether it be interpersonal relationships or whether it be the academics, what sort of support is available at the school sites to help the child through that anxiety?
That's a great question. So first of all, communicate to the school. If you're having anxiety or your students having anxiety, communicate to the school. Let's get them in contact with their site-based counselor first and foremost. After that, we have great partnerships with some of our community agencies. We have Wiley Center counselors available to our students. The Wiley Center counselors are a step above our site-based counselors, where they're going to do a little more of in-depth counseling and support. But then we also have outside agencies such as Care Solace, where we can refer the family out to clinical type supports where the family can get supports and services, the student can get supports and services. Don't be embarrassed if your kid's having anxiety about school. I'm in education, my wife's in education. Every year, my little guy is anxious about going to school. He's in 3rd grade now. He's cried every single year at the start of school. And it's just those conversations we as parents are having with him. But if he ever felt anxious about school, the first thing I would do would be reach out to the school, reach out to the counselor that your kid has. And we have a wealth of supports, as well as we have some social workers and social work interns that we can check in on kids and provide supports with as well.
And I think
Thank
also another thing that's helpful is as a parent speaking positively about school to your student, right? The confidence that it's a safe place to go, that there's kids there that want that are going to become their friends. And so from that perspective, you may still feel anxious as a parent inside. I know I dealt with that. My son, same thing, Ian, when he was little. They had to drag him out of my arms. I mean, it was that point. And I was heartbroken and thought I was a terrible parent. But within, 3 seconds of me driving away, he was fine. So it's really, again, showing the trust you have in the school to your student, but being honest with any of the situations we have up here. Don't be embarrassed to talk to your school. There's solutions. We just need to know what the problem is so that we can help. Maybe I can't fix your problem, but I know people and I have resources. That's what's going to happen at your school.
Brenda, you just brought up a really fascinating point, and it brought me back to being a teacher. I was a 7th grade math teacher, and I remember telling my class, like, this is a hard topic that we're going to get into. And my administrator at the time, my principal, said, Alejandro, if you're telling them from the beginning it's going to be hard, you're already setting them up to be kind of scared of it, right?
Sure.
So it's I kind of translate that to what you said. If we as parents are talking about how school is scary or how school is, we start attributing all these negative attributes to school, or maybe talking about our negative experience with school if we had negative experience at home or in our education trajectory, that the student is formulating their opinion of the world, and they reflect and they mirror that what we tell them. So I think it's really important what you just said, parents, when we're talking to our kids, making sure we're focusing on all of the positives, because if we're just reinforcing how scary it is, they're going to have that block that sometimes we inadvertently put in front of kids. And school, sometimes it can be a scary place, but I think to Mr. Fish's point, there are counselors, there are outside agencies, there's social workers and social worker interns, there's positive relationships with principals, assistant principals, specialists. I mean, Alvord has a really robust, really comprehensive system of supports to your students. And I really just want to highlight what Mr. Fish said. The very first thing when I asked my question, he said, talk to your school. That's what you need to do as a parent. If you're having an issue, bring it up, because they don't know to help you without that. Thank you for those fascinating talking points.
One of the big reasons that we have our students missing school is because of illness, right? So a question always is, when do I send my kid? When do I not send my kid? And probably the COVID pandemic made us question that more than anything. Does my kid go to school, not go to school? When do we send? They have a fever, they're throwing. So we're here to help. We have ways to help. One, like Dr. Cisneros said, call the school, talk to the school. If you have questions, they can walk you through it. Our attendance clerks go through a yearly training. They know when to have kids come to school and see the health assistant, when to have kids stay home, etc. Also, in our annual notification of rights and responsibilities for parents and guardians and students, it's listed on page 40, I believe, of the notification. It might be 42 because we had to add a couple of things this year, but it's in there under absences and excused absences, and it outlines what are the sick ways to send or keep kids home, right? Also have a plan in place. You see number 1 there, asthma, right? Asthma is a big topic every time I meet families who have students that have attendance issues. We have a highly trained set of nurses that monitor students with asthma, diabetes, have to do shots. We also have health assistants at every single school. Those health assistants have a direct line to our nursing staff. Asthma should not be a reason a student misses school. It can flare up. We can address it. We have kids with asthma. We can have nebulizers at school. We have ways to put a healthcare plan in place so that your student can be at school, socialize, access their education, and not be confined at home. Okay. A little change this year to our district. Our health assistants and our nurses are going to be providing kind of clearance at the site level. In the past, we had a AUSD health clinic. Right now, that health clinic, because we were revamping how it looks, Our process is going to be, if you have a question, should I send my kid to school? I think my kid might be sick, might not be sick. You can take them to school, ask to see the health assistant. If the health assistant takes their temperature, says, you know what, I don't think they should be here today, XYZ, they're consulting with the nurse, they'll write an excusal, you'll take your child home. If they think that the student should stay at school, they'll do a quick evaluation, send the student to class. That's a change in kind of our procedures a little bit for the temporary basis, where every student is allowed to see a health assistant, get support, get possible clearance or excusal, and then either go to school or not go to school.
Ian, can I jump in there one more time? Sorry.
You can always, Brenda.
Because we hear this a lot. My child is sick today. We're not going to be in there feeling well. It's really important when you call, first of all, to call the school first thing in the morning, because when your student is marked absent, the school doesn't know if your student is safe or not, or if you know where they're at, right? So it's always important to call the school if your student's not going to be there. But also, on top of saying my student's not feeling well, list out some of the symptoms, right? Because they may say, oh, that's fine, send them, or no, keep them home, right? Also, what that gives your school the ability to do is to see if there's trends happening. So if we've had 4 calls today with kids with fevers and vomiting, well, in the classroom, we're going to have to do some extra cleaning so it doesn't spread. So we can stop that from spreading throughout the classroom and through the school. So it's not that the school wants to get up in your business and personal details, but it's really important, if we're all in this together, share those symptoms, because your school, the ones that are taking the phone calls, are communicating with each other. And if we need additional cleaning or something, the next step, that can happen. But it's really important that you share out with the school when you call, versus just the vague, my student doesn't feel good today. And because a lot of times, sometimes it's, they have a tummy ache or a headache, and it could be anxiety, right? So it's important that you're communicating that with your school and you're not being judged for it. It's just, the more information, the better, the more support that they can have for you and for the other kids as well.
Thanks, Brenda. I want to share this with everybody. This is our 24-25 attendance goal, 95%. 95% is kind of where we were, real close pre-pandemic. That's where we want to get back together. You see better together there. We want to reach that. I am super proud of not only you as parents, but our school sites, our administration, our attendance clerk, and our students, because last year we reached our attendance goal for the year. The previous year, our attendance came in at 91%. 91.5%. My goal for last year was 93% or higher. We reached that goal and exceeded that goal last year. That's because of a collaboration between families, parents, students, staff, everybody kind of pulled together to get our kids back in. So I personally, since I have you as parents here right now and community members, just want to say thank you. And then also say, help us reach that 95% this year. Help get kids there. Spread the word to the community. Talk about the importance of having a student there and communicating with the school should they need supports.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, we received a question in the chat that I'd like to highlight. Oh, it actually went away. I've never seen a chat question be deleted. I didn't know that was a thing that could happen. But before it was deleted, the question was around hours of the nurses' assistants, the nurses or the health assistants. The person that brought the question up said that there had been times when they tried to speak to a nurse last year, and it was about 9 o'clock, about an hour after school started, and there was no nurse on site. So when are the health assistants available to our families?
Yeah, so our health assistants are available from the time kids get to school to the end of the school day. Our nurses cover multiple sites, so the access to a nurse may not be readily available, but you can always communicate with your health assistant to see if you can reach out to the nurse or if they can reach out to the nurse on your behalf. You can always reach out to me here in Student Services if you have a question or concern as well. We oversee the nurses, myself and Dr. Freeman in this office. We oversee the nurses, so if you're having trouble making contact, please contact Student Services and we'll get you in contact with the appropriate nurse to support you. Thank you, Dr. Cisneros, for the email, because I don't think I had it on there. You're the man. We just talked about parent involvement, right? So parent involvement is a big predictor in the success of student achievement. It doesn't matter how much money we have, doesn't matter what our social status is, doesn't matter, if we have a college education or not. What matters is, what is your involvement with your student and your child? Are you asking them questions when they come home? I ask my kids every single day, what was one thing that was great about school? What was one thing you didn't like? What was one thing that was scary? Sometimes they're saying nothing, nothing, nothing. Other times my daughter tells me, I changed instruments. I'm playing a new instrument now, Dad. Great. How much money do I have to spend is what I ask, right? But the more you communicate with your kids, you're going to know if they're nervous about something. You're going to know if they're scared about something. You're going to know if they were having a good day in math class or having a real bad day. It's just that communication that has to happen at home, and that involvement and really being invested, which I know you all are because you're here tonight, but being invested in your kid to know their business all the time. Once they turn 18, you still should know their business. My mom knows my business and I'm 45 years old, right? So
Me too.
that involvement, all the other stuff doesn't matter, but parent involvement is huge. Brenda, you want to talk about this?
For sure. So as a, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we just had a question in the chat. Sorry, Ms. Tapp. My kids are always stressed out from ants in their classroom.
Yeah, I would recommend speaking to the administrator at the school. They can get a kind of notification to our maintenance operation department to hopefully address the ants. Unfortunately, it's been pretty warm right now, so we do see pests once in a while, but we should work to resolve that issue so your kids aren't stressed about the ants in the classroom. Absolutely. And again, should you need some support, Student Services is always here to support as well.
Fantastic. So what can parents do? So kind of talked about this, kind of a recap. So really making education a priority at home. And sometimes that is asking questions, and not necessarily yes or no questions. So I love Ian's example of, what did you learn today? What was, the best part of your day? Because I know too, I have two kids. It's yes or no, right? If you ask those questions. So digging for a little bit more detail, being engaged, talking to your child consistently about the importance of education. Not that everybody is going to go to college, but education is going to be an important foundation of whichever path they choose moving forward. We just need them to graduate and be successful. The basics routines is critical. Things like going to bed early or having a routine bedtime, right? Every single night, putting your clothes out the night before kind of is preparing that student for the next day, and can build up excitement there. Having designated homework time, and there isn't a set time. Hey, 4:30 to 5 is when you should do it. It's really based on your student and how you're on your family, but having that same routine can really build up your students' confidence. And if your child is reluctant to go to school, ask questions, ask why, what's going on. And again, I know it's so hard. It's sometimes hard to not get caught up in that. Hear out what they're saying and then talk to your school. That's the most important part. And try to stay positive in how you're going to support them, but also how the school is going to support them. Because absenteeism, we know, is usually a symptom of something else that's happening. And that's why we have to ask those questions. And then always have a backup plan to help get your child to school every day. Life happens. You may not be able to take your student that day, but have a backup plan so that they can get there. Also, I talked about being late initially. We don't want children to come to school late. It's disruptive to the student, to the classroom, to the teacher. But if you're running late, it happens, life happens. Showing up is more important than not coming at all. So we want them to be on time. Again, it's really stressful on those kids when they show up. I see them dragging their backpacks across the campus to get to school. It's stressful. But again, if it's we're going to be late, call the school, let them know you're on the way. Still bring your child in, because they can still get in, even if it's an hour of learning, get their learning in that day and that connection with their classmates and their teacher. So being late doesn't mean don't come to school.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about the top two, Brenda, and then
Yep.
I'll let you jump in. Sorry. We've talked a lot about communicating with the school. two topics that come up and supports that we have for students. If you know you have a planned vacation, I'm going to use my family as an example. We traveled to Europe and had to pull our kids out of school 1 year. I knew I was going to have my kids miss school, so I put my kids on short-term independent study. My kids were on short-term independent study. They did all their homework. They turned in their homework when we got back. Those absences were cleared because technically my kids were doing schoolwork while we were on vacation. I'm the mean dad that makes them do homework on an airplane, right? You have that option if you know already, I have to go visit family X, Y, or Z. We're going on a vacation. My son plays on a club soccer team. Our daughter plays on a club soccer team. We're going to Dallas for the Dallas Cup, whatever it might be. Work with the school because we have avenues to make sure that one, they're getting their education, and two, those absences get cleared so that they're not counting towards their absenteeism. The other way is home and hospital. Sometimes life happens, as Brenda said, and kids get sick, get ill. Home and hospital is a program for short-term illnesses. Unfortunately, some kids become sick to the point where they have to seek medical attention. We can work and provide a teacher to provide support in the home for those students. Communicate with the school. If you're worried that your kid's sick and you're embarrassed, it doesn't matter. We unfortunately, we have students who have cancer and are undergoing chemotherapy, or we have students that have high anxiety, and they have crippling anxiety to the point where it's hard to get them out of the house. We work with both mental health providers, therapists, or doctors that are seeing students for care. So those are two ways that we can support a student when they're not traditionally in school, but we're providing academic support to those students. The other thing is the language barrier. Every school site has multiple people either in the front office or on their administrative team that speak Spanish. Don't let the barrier of language be an issue. If you speak another language than Spanish, don't worry, we got you covered. We have a translation department. We can reach out. I've been in meetings with families that speak Mandarin, that speak Vietnamese, that speak Farsi, not only Spanish. So we have ways to communicate with you. Please don't let a language barrier be something that holds you back. Brenda, you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was gonna say always call the school. I learned this as a parent when I had my kindergartner who I kept home because he was sick. Didn't call the school. It's not the school's business. He's my kid. Well, no, the school is really responsible for your student Monday through Friday. So the school needs to know where your student is. So excused or unexcused, always communicate with your school and let them know, A, your student is safe and with you. And this is the reason why I'm keeping my student home today. So that's going to be very, very important. And then also try to get that makeup work from the teacher so your student doesn't miss out and start slipping behind on the academics and the learning part, right? If you need additional support, again, the number one thing I can say is talk to your school, ask for help. I think so many times as a parent, we think school is just where they go to learn, which it would be so easy if that was the case, but it's so much bigger. Your school is so much more than just a learning facility. It's a family support resource. So don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. I've worked with Albert, the schools for many, many years. They're not judging you as a parent. They want to help, but they just need to know how they can help you. And that's the biggest piece of that. I'll let you talk about your support teams.
Yeah. Some other support systems, as you heard me talk about, we have 6 sites that have community coordinators now that are points of contact for those school sites. We have 2 community workers. We have 2 social workers. We have 10 social work interns. Those are just additional adults on campuses that can provide supports to you as families and to your students. And the last bullet point that I have there is get involved. Get involved. We need parents. You guys are already involved because you're here tonight. Mm-hmm. And I applaud and commend you for that. But we have our ELAC, or our English Language Advisory Committee. We have our DLAC, our District Language Advisory Committee. We have school site councils. We have PTOs. We have a variety of ways, and I'm probably missing 10 ways that you can get involved at a school. The more your children see you on campus, the more excited they are about school because they want to share that experience with you. They may tell you they don't, but every time I walk on campus with my kids and they're in elementary, they want to share that experience with me. I've seen high school kids when I used to be at Norte Vista just glow with pride because of their mom or dad getting to go into a classroom, meet the teacher, and see the work that they're doing. So if you can, if you have the time in your schedule, please ask to be involved, ask to be a part of something at your child's school. Because the next slide is, I need help. We need help. Trustee Moreno, who's on here, she needs help. Our school district, you guys are the messengers to our community. We can't be everywhere at once. Talk to parents, explain who they can call, encourage them to talk to the school site, have them reach out to student services if they need to. But please spread the importance or the message of being at school on time, being at school daily to your community and to your social circles, because that's only going to help us, because we're touching the tip of the iceberg today. Otherwise, there would be almost 16,000 parents here, or sure, smaller than that. So we need you guys to support us in this. And then let your child know, ultimately, attending school is their job right now.
Mhm.
It's their job. They get paid for getting to school on time, and especially our high school or our high school students. I always told my high school students, your paycheck is the credits you earn. You got to get 220 credits so you can reach graduation. Once you reach graduation, then you move on to the next step, whether it's college or career. So what employers ultimately are looking for is a kid reliable? Is a person reliable? Can they finish something that they started? Do they have good attendance? So those are just some things. It's a broad overview of the importance and how you guys can support us. And I appreciate your guys' time. We have a few minutes left. I want to honor everybody's time because I see families on walks and everybody's enjoying their dinner or whatever's going on. It's awesome. So Trustee Moreno, do you want to say anything before I open it to questions?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to applaud each and every one of you who are here this evening, because you're putting in the investment to your children's future by being here. And the things that we learned today really all go back to that second to the last slide, which we can't do it without you, and we are better together. So I look forward to many more meetings and workshops where we can grow together to doing the best we can for our students, because they are our future. And so the more that we invest in them and their needs and their wants, the better our community will be. So thank you all for being here this evening on behalf of the entire Board of Education. Thank you for this information. It is definitely important for us to know. So thank you again, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Are there any questions with the last 2 minutes?
I don't see any questions coming in, but I'd like to just share my screen briefly and give parents an overview of what we have coming up in the next couple of weeks in terms of our presentations for families. So we are here. I think Mr. Fish said we're just at the tip of the iceberg. So this is our second of 16. We have a very full schedule, and this is just first semester. Next Wednesday, we're going to have a presentation on raising cyber smart kids. So we hope that you can join us. That's on the 4th. The following Tuesday, we have English Learner Support Services. So if your child is an English language learner, what are the ways that we support them? And then right in between those two, there's like an invisible one there. There's a different flyer for that. It's for our Family Leadership Conference on Saturday, the 14th of September. We have a conference that's happening at La Sierra High School, and I have the flyer here. You can visit tinyurl.com/OurFamily, or you can take a quick screenshot and get the QR code. We are going to have a total of 12 presentations in addition to a keynote session, all on ways that you as families can really support your child's learning from home. So I think Mr. Fish and Trustee Moreno said it best. We can't do this without you. And these are some of the ways that we are systematically as a district having these dialogues to show you all of the things that are available to you in the Alvord Unified School District. But if there's something that we're missing or there's a particular concern that you have, reach out to your school, reach out to your school, reach out to your school. And on that, everybody have a good night. And thank you again to Yvonne for being here, always supporting our families to ensure that whether they speak English or Spanish, our parents can get access to this information. Good night, everybody.